that risk, and that may cost the business. And people are always reluctant to throw out food if there's a cost involved. However, the fundamental issue is that you need to protect your reputation. And what you'll see today is we're going to be talking about how can you not waste so much food, so that's part of our discussions today. So for many of you here today, and those of you who are setting up your own business, you will have to be thinking about what are you cooking? And as we talk about food, and we'll be talking about this a lot today, it really comes down to, are the foods that you are cooking high risk? And I'm going to go through and explain all this to you. And so for those of you setting up a business, if you're cooking, for instance, chicken or mince, in the first instance, these are both high-risk foods. And so as soon as you're cooking chicken, you're going to have more systems in place to make sure that your food is safe. So for startup people, there is something called My Food Rules, which is sort of, it's a question and answer profile that's been created by MPI, and it's on their website, and it's asking you, what are you cooking? Are you cooking at home? Are you planning to make a product that you export? It's asking you a whole lot of questions which will help you understand where you fit within the food control plan system. And for most of you, I can see from the chat, you will be running your food control plan is coming out of what we call the Simply Safe and Suitable template. And we're going to look at that in a minute, because this is for food retail businesses such as retail bakers, delis, supermarkets, but also for food service such as restaurants, cafes, takeaways, caterer, but also if you are in residential care facility or education. So those of you who are in early childhood, you will be probably using this template that has been prepared by MPI. And for those of you who are not sure what you are, this is where My Food Rules will help you understand. So importantly, the Food Act is administered by your local council. So your local council employs people called environmental health officers. Excuse me. And their job is to help you make sure you're compliant under the Act. So as soon as, if you're a startup and you haven't registered for the food control plan, or you will be, when you do, you'll go to your local council's website and register, and or you can go in person, and then you'll see that there is an annual registration fee. So this is happening each year. And that this there is a verification fee as well, which includes a visit, generally, which is either annually or once you're more experienced, every 18 months. And what will happen when you get this visit is the environmental health officers are looking at your methods. They want to know, how you know your food is safe. And they'll also want to check your food control plan, your written plan, for how you manage your food safety on a day-to-day basis. And this is also for those of you running out of a home kitchen, that you will have to have some sort of written plan for managing food safety. It doesn't have to be too difficult. I know it sounds difficult, but it's really not difficult when you start thinking through the activities that you're doing and and what you need to make sure your food is safe. However, if some of you today, if you were doing, say, a food truck for a market and you're doing coffee and cakes, you'll find that these are low-risk businesses. Something, or cookies, something that's got sugar and flour in it, and it's a low-risk business, and so there's less compliance required. But as soon as you want to start cooking a meat, particularly chicken, using eggs, then these are high-risk ingredients which will force you into this Simply Safe and Suitable template. So I just want to show you two things. First of all, we're going to go to this template on the Ministry of Primary Industries website, but also here, and I'm just going to highlight this, there are some blank forms that you use to use in order to create your own food control plan. So, but also when we look here, we'll just go here for a minute, just click through to the MPI website. So this is what it looks like, and it is, and some of you will recognize this, and you can download it. And it is wanting you to think about the daily cycle in your kitchen, how you start the day, what are you doing preparing food, etc. And when you can, what you can do is you can download this document, but don't print it, because you'll see it's got 137 pages here, because what you're going to need to do is download it and figure out what is relevant to you. So you will need to do this setting up. The blue card, they call them cards for no reason. They're just topics. You can think of them as topics. So this is you setting up your business, what it is. You need to be thinking about how you get your water. So for some of you who are in a rural area and you are getting water, rainwater from your roof or water from a bore in the ground, then you will need to do some more research on this to ensure that your water is tested and safe. For those of you who are living in urban centres around the country, then your water will be tested by your local council. So that should be fine, except in emergencies like Cyclone Gabrielle, when one of the first things that became problematic was the water, the drinking water, where the councils issued boil water notices. So over here we've got green cards for preparing and storing food, and we're going to be talking about this today. But so the environmental health officers will want to know, where are you storing your food, for instance? Are you storing it above, off the floor or in a fridge? So we'll spend some time talking about that. The magenta cards are for making and cooking food, and they are looking at things like poultry, chicken, and mincemeats and livers. So these are these high-risk foods, and we'll look at those in some detail. But also, if you're cooking in your home kitchen and then traveling to a farmer's market and reheating your food, how do you know that you're reheating it sufficiently to keep it safe? So there's quite a lot of things through there we'll be discussing. And over here we have, we're looking at how we keep food hot, how we transport food, how you make sure that your food is not exposed to hot temperatures for hours and hours and hours. You need to know what is in your food, as these days there's just more and more issues around allergens, so you have to be very clear about what is in your food, and then you need to develop a cleaning program, but also a maintenance program for your business. And over here, these teal cards, these are specialist cards, which may not be relevant to you. So for instance, if you're not making sushi, you can ignore this. Most of you won't be making a doner kebab. A sous vide machine is for poaching. So it's used in upmarket restaurants where they put, say, a cut of meat in a vacuum bag and then in a water bath at around 60 degrees, and the water's, it's there for maybe 12 hours while they're creating this slow cooking method. And so this is also regarded as high risk. So that's sort of an overview of these. I'm just going to close that down now. And part of this, what we're really talking about is this word provenance. How do you know that your food is safe? What is the history or the background of an ingredient, or even your tea towel? Has your tea towel been on the floor? And how long has that food been open or in the fridge? So these are some of the questions that you need to be able to answer. So one of the things, and it would be good if you can start making your own notes to what's in the book. So first of all, what we want you to do with your fridge, well, with food, is to label it. And people will get what's called masking tape. So this is a paper sellotape and a marker pen, and they will literally write. So let's say we're opening some hummus. So what they'll do is, okay, the hummus is open, and when you put it in the fridge, unfinished, you're putting in, so it was opened on the 21st of the 11th today, and the container says to use within 4 days. So we're going to then put on this, the 25th of the 11th, to tell us that this food is, if we go back to our fridge and we look in the fridge and go, oh, there's some hummus, and by now it's the 1st of December and we should have eaten it on the 25th, then we know to throw out the food. And something, and next door to me in the room next door to me, there's a whole lot of people making cocktails, and they're making a lot of noise. So I'm just going to go and shut the door. I'll be back in a minute. Sorry about that. Okay, so we've got them. So we've got to label the food, and importantly too, what will happen is if you start labeling food like the hummus in your fridge, and you should do this at home, you will start avoiding waste, because in your mind you'll go, oh, I need to use that up. But also it will help you to just be confident whether the food is safe. So we don't just want to do food in the fridge. We want to also do your dry store. So again, when you look at food that you've got, say you've got some almonds, you're baking some cookies with almonds, and you've opened this packet of almonds, and it's going into your dry store. So you should still, with your masking tape, you should still date it. You should say, okay, this was opened on the 21st of the 11th. And then, when you look back, in a year's time, and you've forgotten about those almonds, and you look at them and you go, actually, that they're not smelling so good, then maybe, you should be chucking them out. So again, it's about thinking about when you open things, but also I want to say when you freeze goods. So again, you should be writing the date that you put it into the freezer. Say it was the 1st of December, because then again you can look in your freezer and go, oh, that's over a year old. So with goods in the freezer, we say that they should be rotated every 6 to 9 months. And you really want, maybe, this weekend, now that you've done this class, you should look in your freezer and see what is there. Because again, freezers, what happens when you freeze goods, particularly meat, is the water content the water in the meat, so meat contains around 75% water, it forms ice crystals when it freezes. And so that's why when you defrost meat from the freezer, there's always a puddle of water. Have you noticed this? You know that when you defrost the meat, there's always more water or blood-coloured water than it is from a fresh piece of meat. And this is because of the water in meat's forming crystals, and the crystals are ice, and therefore they're leaching out of the meat. So that is why frozen meat never tastes as good. Well, never has as good, tastes as good as fresh. And you can just reflect on that too. So also, you'll be aware that we know when you're buying goods, that there is usually on the packaging is what we call the use by date. And the best before date. And the best before date is a recommendation. It says, it's best to eat this before this date, because quality may deteriorate, after this date. However, it is not unsafe to eat. While the use by date, which used to be called the expiry date, is what the use by date is basically saying it is unsafe after this date. And that is for things like chicken. And this is the problem for the supermarkets, is that they cannot sell goods that are past their use by date. So that's where we're getting all this food rescue. And chicken is probably disproportionately, chicken and mince are the most common things that are coming to their use by dates, and the supermarkets in the past, they were just chucking out the food. Sometimes they'll be able to use it in their, they cook in their deli counters. But, this has been a problem. And so the problem is, and I know we've got someone from a rescue organisation here today, the problem is for the supermarkets is essentially what's happening is they are freezing the chicken and the meat or mince, and then what happens? So this is the problem. So really, we need to have organisations who are actually rather than having freezers, hundreds of thousands of freezers around the world, around New Zealand and the world, with frozen chicken in, consuming electricity. We should really be trying to deal with this surplus food, at the supermarket. So it's a complex problem, because every week, there's more, so anyway, what I want to say to all of you today too is that you need to learn to smell everything. You need to train your nose. And particularly when you're looking at high-risk foods like chicken or mince, that, and this is even at home. So you've got some mince, you're cooking it for dinner, or you've got some chicken, you just open a little bit of the corner and smell it. You go, sniff, sniff. And because you like, don't open the whole packet, just nose in, sniff, sniff, because as the chicken or anything, particularly proteins, any protein that starts to perish, meaning to go off, there is a chemical change in it, and you can smell it. Your fabulous nose is able to detect that, and so you can smell it. Okay, smells fine. I mean, what's the chemical change? The chemical change, it starts to smell a bit funky, or a bit, I don't know, metallic, or, it does not smell fresh. So, and I, some of you will know what I'm talking about, but what I really want to encourage everyone to do is to just go sniff, sniff. And you see, even for me, even I'm doing it, even if it's not near, I'm just doing it for everything. So say I've got some chicken in the fridge at home and I'm going to cook it for dinner, I'm still smelling it even if it has a couple of days to go, because sometimes the chicken goes off before the use by date. So again, it's just for those of you who are cooking, it's a very good habit to develop. And the more you do it, the better you understand your food, and the better you'll be able to identify. You look at this mince, smells fine. It doesn't smell of anything. So that's again something that you can reflect on. So one of our big themes for today is this word, cross-contamination. It's when microorganisms from one product contaminate another product by way of a third party. So, for example, failing to wash your knife, chopping board, and your hands after touching chicken. So if you think of, we're going to cook some chicken, we've got our chopping board, we've got our knife, we've smelled it, smells okay. So we put it on our board and we cut it up with the knife. So what the chicken producers want you to do is that you should not recycle any packaging, including the drip tray that the chicken was on. And the reason being that this packaging, so you're just going to put it in the rubbish. This packaging could cross-contaminate other things in your kitchen, such as you spray the raw chicken juices around your sink. And what happens with those raw chicken juices, they are translucent. So when they're raw, so translucent, and you cannot see them. You cannot see them on your hands, on your chopping board, on your knife. So you must train yourself to assume that you've cut that up, and then you need to, wash your hands, the board, and the knife. And don't cut anything on the same board. So don't, if you were to then take some cabbage or some lettuce for a salad, cut it up on the same chopping board, you are cross-contaminating the vegetables. And I know you're going to say, well, hold on, we're washing these things in the kitchen sink, but I've just told you not to recycle this for the same reasons, but it's more to do with the volume of chicken juices that you're spraying around. And of course, our hands are the most common, vector for cross-contamination. But I also want to mention, your trusty tea towel. So in a professional kitchen, the tea towel is often referred to as the chef's cloth. But really, it's just a tea towel gets tucked into your apron, and maybe you're using it for lifting trays out of the oven. You might be using it to handles of pots, but you need to think about where has your tea towel been, because you can't use, if it's dropped on the floor, it needs to go in the wash. And you can't be, drying clean dishes with a tea towel that you've been using for lifting food or, on the hobs. So you need to have, for drying clean dishes, you need to have, a clean cloth. So the crazy thing is with the tea towel, it can easily cross-contaminate. And, you just have to watch it. And then another example would be serving utensils. So you need to have, individual serving tongs or spoons for different products. So you can't be using the spoons so that you put them in the salad, then you use the same spoon into the chicken salad and the same spoon into the lettuce salad. That's a form of cross-contamination as well. So you need to have different spoons. And then, of course, we have double dipping, which is really using the same spoon or your finger to taste food. And here at the School of Food and Wine, I've got lots of students cooking today, and I say to them, just imagine that you are on MasterChef and filmed licking your fingers, or you're stirring the pot and you get the wooden spoon, you taste it, you go, oh yeah, it needs more salt, put the salt in, and then you put the same spoon back, or wooden spoon back into the pot, so your saliva is going back into a pot of curry or stew or soup that you're wanting to serve to your people. So what we recommend is that you have a tasting jug, and it can just have cold water, some spoons, but also a paper towel. So that you've got your tasting spoons, you put it into the curry, eat it, needs more salt, put the salt in, put the spoon back into the tasting jug, and the next time you use it, you're wiping it off. You're wiping it off each time with your paper towel. And that way, you're avoiding this. But, ultimately, it is about self-management. That you have to say to yourself, just because no one can see me, no one's watching me slobber into my food, is this professional? And you say, actually, no, I'm going to be a grown-up and I'm not going to do that. It's just bad practice. So stop that. And you can stop it at home as well. You can just train all your family, whānau, to have a go yourselves with a tasting jug, and not, just because no one's looking doesn't mean it's okay. And, the sad thing is that, when a person suffers from food poisoning, they're often quick to blame the last meal that they purchased. However, sometimes it's due to their own poor standards of personal food hygiene. And so that, say, for some of you, you've got a cafe and you've made a chicken sandwich, and a person comes back to you and says, yesterday, fried the chicken sandwich, and it's given them food poisoning. But you can say, well, actually, we have a system where we check the temperatures. I'm going to explain this. So we are confident that nothing out of our kitchen could have done this to you. It must be something else. So, and this is part of you just being organized and confident that your food is safe. But also, I just want to mention at home, that chopping board, when was it last washed? And as we know, at home, people often leave the chopping board on the bench for days. And if you've got a flat or a house with multiple people living in it, who knows what was chopped on it? Everybody's eating at different times. When was it last washed? And you need to be thinking about patting your cat and dog, that you're sitting in front of the TV, patting the dog and go, okay, I'm going to eat something now, prepare dinner now. And then you go into the kitchen, that you must always wash your hands. Because even your precious cat and dog, they are sources of Campylobacter, and Salmonella, two of the most common bacteria that we have that cause food poisoning in New Zealand. So it's all about your hands. And look, I've owned restaurants and cafes. I'm, originally from Canterbury, from Christchurch. I had a restaurant for 17 years until the Christchurch earthquakes got destroyed in the earthquakes. We've been here in Auckland since that time, but I'm always washing my hands multiple times a day. And even when I go into our kitchen and maybe help the tutors with some marking or something, it's just so ingrained in my thinking to wash my hands that it just feels wrong. And so that's what you have to do. And also, the first thing I do when I get home from work, when I work into my home, is wash my hands. So it's just about keeping, our hands. We love our hands, but we've got to keep them clean, especially around food, because microorganisms are everywhere. And a microorganism is an organism of microscopic size, and we find them, on our face, on our hands, in our intestines, in our feces. And that's why we must wash our hands, but also in soil, in water, in food, in air. These are just naturally about us. And within this category, of microorganisms, we have this other broad category called fungi or fungi, and this includes things like yeasts and molds, and we'll talk about a little bit more as we go through. But microorganisms are important to us because we need them for fermenting foods. For instance, if you wanted to make kimchi or make bread, that's what's doing it. But also we use microorganisms to treat sewage. But also don't forget about your stomachs. Our stomachs are fermenting, and and part of the keeping a healthy gut is because of the microorganisms there. But there are ones that are pathogenic, or that cause us they produce a disease. And this is why, as I say, washing our hands is the most important skill that we need to share. So, toxins are the waste products of microorganisms, and some toxins can produce severe and long-lasting effects on your body. And toxins are very heat resistant, so that heating up an affected food will not make it safe. Spores, some bacteria and molds produce spores. So spores coat the bacteria and put it in a resting stage. And so, so therefore, an example of a spore would be, if you think of mushrooms. So mushrooms are fungi, and they're formed from spores that are in the ground that hatch at certain times of the year. So if you think of a mushroom, we usually see them in autumn, and because there's a bit of rain, so they like moisture. The rain comes and soaks the ground. The ground has all these spores in it, squillions of spores, but suddenly the spores from the fungi, from the mushroom, are activated by the moisture. They like, hot, warm day, which stimulates them to grow, and that's why suddenly a mushroom can pop up overnight. So a mushroom is the fruiting of a spore. But, we also have spore-forming bacteria such as Clostridium botulinum, or Bacillus cereus. And we'll talk about that a bit more, but these are some of the foodborne illnesses that you need to be familiar with. So we can talk about a biological hazard or a biohazard, which consists of living organisms that pose a threat to human health. And in my situation in Christchurch following the earthquake, in my restaurant, we had lamb from our family farm, and we had a delivery of 180 kilos of lamb that had all been packaged up into 5 kilo packages the day before the earthquake. And when I finally got back into the restaurant, I could see that, 6 weeks of no refrigeration, and you could see all the lamb was still vacuum packed, but it was bloated and grey and, obviously looking pretty scary. So that would equate to a biohazard. And in fact, when we finally had to clear out the cooler, we had to get people to come in full PPE with masks because they don't want to breathe in the spores in the atmosphere from all this rotten food. But interestingly, when I did get into the chiller, we had some salmon there. The salmon had been vacuum packed, side of salmon. It had been cured with a little sugar and a bit of brandy and salt. And it still, after, 6 weeks, looked perfectly fine visually. But was I going to eat it? Absolutely not. But we also had some duck confit, and duck confit is like titi, like mutton bird. It has been rendered down in its own fat and is an ancient method of preservation, rendering meat and so forth. And again, the duck confit looked fine as well, but too risky to eat it, So those are sort of examples of biohazards. Chemical hazards are around us all the time, and these can be things like, lead used to be in paint, mercury in fish, so again, heavy metals which are coming often from, discharges to the environment, but also through fertilizers and, help, as part of the growing cycle. But even in your kitchen, if you think of detergents, they are potentially they are an example of a chemical hazard. But so are sanitizers and fly sprays. You don't want to spray over your food. You need to keep away from your food. But also, if you think about pesticide residue, so this is why it's good to wash your vegetables or to wipe your vegetables before you eat them. And this is another important thing that people you need to do. So those are a chemical hazard. And then a physical hazard is to do with a foreign material like a stone in your salad or plastic from your packaging or a fish bone. So I'm just going to leave that there. We're going to do something now, and this is where I need you to get a piece of paper. We're going to be drawing a thermometer. So if you could just get an A4 piece of paper, and we're going to do a rectangle down the middle of it. And then I'm going to get you involved too. So the bottom of our piece of paper, this is going to be the freezer temperature. So who knows what's the temperature of your freezer? It's a range. You can write it in the chat. Okay, very good. It's a range. It's between minus 14 degrees Celsius and minus 18 degrees Celsius. And at those temperatures, bacteria are dormant.
No.
So they're not multiplying. However, as soon as you defrost the goods, bacteria will start to multiply again. So what about the range for your fridge? Who knows this? Okay, anybody else? Okay, so the fridge is between 2 degrees. Yes, Nugent, you're right. 2 degrees and 5 degrees, but I'm going to call it 4.99, which is 5 degrees, because I want to use 5 degrees for something else. So this is your fridge. And here, bacteria multiply slower because of the coolness. And I'm sure a lot of you will know that refrigeration extends the life of foods. So in New Zealand, MPI used the temperature of 21 degrees as a definition of room of temperature. Or even though we know we'll say it's a room temperature average. Across the year. And if we think of this average, so I mean, we know in summer, it can get up, maybe 28 degrees or 30 degrees, depending on where you're living. So if you were to take the hummus out of the fridge at 4 degrees, how long would it take to get to, 21 degrees or above? What do you think, to room temperature?
Two hours?
Any thoughts? Any other thoughts? Any bets? Well, Andrew, you're pretty onto it. It's so they say somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes. And so if you were to make some sandwiches, so you take the hummus out, put it on your bench, you get sidetracked because something else is happening. And suddenly it's been on your bench for 3 hours and you forgot about it. What happens is you'll start to see it's starting to separate, to split. It's starting to perish. Because we talk about between 5 degrees and 59.99, well, that's actually 60, that this is the danger zone. And this is where bacteria starts to multiply quickly. So there is quite a difference. So for instance, in Dunedin, for instance, if your ambient temperature is 17 degrees, and in Hawke's Bay, if your ambient temperature is 22 degrees, then things in Hawke's Bay are going to start perishing faster when you leave things on the bench. So you have to be thinking about what's happening on the bench, what's happening in my kitchen. And 60 degrees is one of these important temperatures that you all need to remember. So when food is heated to above 60 degrees, bacteria start to die. So the heating process will do that. So 60 degrees is an important temperature, and I want to just do this scenario. So if you can just go to the top of your page, we're going to think about at 100 170 or 170 or 180 degrees, we're going to make a quiche. So, with our quiche, we're going to be putting in, we're going to make some pastry. It's a quiche Lorraine. So we're going to have pastry. And in here, the pastry is made of flour. So flour, anything with flour is low risk. It's a low risk food because it's dry. We know it lasts for years. And we're going to put in some fat into this. So fat could be butter. So even though butter is an animal product, it's still low risk. So we're going to have butter, we can have some oil, or, the old days you put in lard, or margarine. So these products also are low risk. They're also low risk because, like butter is a solid fat, so it doesn't melt too fast. So then into our quiche, we're going to add we're going to saute some onions. So we have onions, we might have some tomatoes for garnish, parsley. So these are all fresh, and pretty much anything fresh is low risk. So you can confidently use fresh things. They just don't last very long. And then we're going to put in some bacon. So bacon is interesting. So bacon is obviously pork that is brined. And brining is a mixture of salt and water. And the brining extends the life of the bacon. And what's interesting, if you compare bacon with pork, pork won't last very long, will it? Whereas bacon can last 4 weeks. And I do really want you to look, with your shopping, you need to start looking at the NIPs. What are the NIPs? Those are those back labels, the nutrition information panels, because it's going to tell you where the products come from, but also it tells you the additives. And I'm not sure whether you've noticed when you're cooking up streaky bacon, sometimes there's that puddle of water forms. Anybody notice that? You're frying it and there's a whole lot of, water there. And that is to do with the additives in that product. But also on those nutrition information panels, it will tell you that in New Zealand, we import a lot of pork and bacon. So it might be coming from Denmark or, Eastern Europe. And they have to disclose that on the packaging. And I do want to do a shout out to all the butchers in New Zealand who are making their own bacon, and there are lots all around the country. You can find them out, because what they are, when someone's doing their own bacon, they are also air drying it, which means that the bacon will be hung, and the hanging of it does remove the moisture content. And yes, New Zealand bacon is more expensive, but you need less of it because it's better quality. And it's worth looking around for different bacons, because you won't need to buy so much, you see. Okay, so we've got our bacon, and now we're going to add in some cheese. And the cheese that we're using is a hard cheese, like a cheddar. And this is also hard and salty. It's preserved, and it is low risk, and lasts for years, as well. So and if you have a hard cheese in your fridge that's got a bit of mold on it, you can always cut off the mold. So the mold, as long as it's not too bad, can be cut off, and you don't need to throw it all out. So the mold, but if you need to use a fresh cheese, such as a ricotta or cottage cheese or fresh mozzarella, you need to be very careful with it, because the fresh cheeses are high risk. And they need to be used within a few days. So you need to manage those. And then we're going to add some egg, cream and milk. And these are all high risk ingredients. So we must make sure that our food the quiche is cooked properly. So if we have a scenario where you get to work at 8 a.m. and you make a quiche. You make the quiche. At 9 a.m. it's ready to go. It's in the oven. Takes 45 minutes to cook, say. So by 10 a.m. it's cooling on the bench. So the question is, you take it out at 10 a.m., what's going to happen to it. So if you can think that by 2 p.m., by 4 hours, in 4 hours, the quiche is eaten. It's all gone. Therefore, it does not need refrigeration. But if you get to 2 o'clock and there's 2 pieces of quiche left, then you have to eat it for lunch or give it away. Because you can't leave it out for 4 hours at 21 degrees and then put it back into the fridge to use tomorrow. Because we've got to cool food fast. So let's say today, you're going to use it all today, perfect. But say you want to use it tomorrow. So once we're cooling it on our bench, we need it to cool down to 21 degrees. And when it gets to 21 degrees, we can now put in fridge. Because we have to get it in the fridge as quickly as we can. And then if you think tomorrow, so we've got it cooled, or on Friday, 2 days' time, the quiche is at 2 degrees, and the quiche is in the fridge. It's going to last for probably, 5 to 6 days maybe. Yep. And then one day we want to reheat it for lunch. So now we take the quiche from the fridge and we need to reheat it, and another of these important temperatures is 75 degrees Celsius. So we need to reheat the quiche to this internal temperature. So we've got to get it to 75 degrees, and then we can put it into a pie warmer or oven, what we call a holding temperature of 60 degrees. And so this, we're going to break shortly, but I just want to show you. So this holding temperature is, like what you need food to be at 60, but not 58, not in the danger zone. So I just want to, before we break, I just want to show you something in the book. And when we break, I'm going to leave this thermometer on my screen in case some of you have missed it, because it is going to help you with the assessment. But if I just go back in here, and I'm just going to scroll down to a later section. So everybody is going to need to have a probe thermometer. And this is going to take, you put it into the food to read it. A thermometer like this is an infrared thermometer, and it only reads the surface area. And it's not, you can't read inside, you can't get inside the food with it. And so we need a probe thermometer. This sort of thermometer isn't much use for anybody because it's, an analog thermometer. So we need to be looking at our quiche temperatures as well as our chicken, but you will also need to record the temperatures of the food in your refrigerator or cooler or chiller. So, and when I say the food, they don't want you, they don't care about a dial on the outside of your fridge that's telling you the temperature. They want to know what the food inside the fridge, the temperature of the food inside your fridge. And you will have to keep a record of this even at home. And people will often put a bottle of water in the fridge, or or your milk, just leave it in there. And again, you're checking the temperature of the water, not the temperature of the fridge. And yes, you can get some apps that do this for you. But if you're a small business, these are probably too expensive. So you can just do, keep a simple record on a clipboard. Here, recorded the fridge temperature at 8 a.m. It's 4 degrees, and I've signed it off Celia. So, it's that simple. And we'll talk about this a bit later. We talked about your freezer. And again, you can read through this material. Here it talks about cooking the high-risk foods of poultry, minced meat, and liver. And you'll see, as you read through this, it says you can reach an internal temperature of 75 degrees for 30 seconds. That's what we were saying. Or 70 degrees for 3 minutes, or 65 for 15 minutes. Internal temperature. So you're not, like if you're cooking a chicken drumstick, it doesn't have to be at this temperature for very long. But you need to be able to prove that your record works, and you need to be able to prove or show evidence. So you need to show records that every time you're cooking chicken, you're at least doing one reading of the chicken drumstick of a batch. And cooling food is very important. And I'm not sure whether some of you heard about the food poisoning at a University of Canterbury hostel about 2 weeks ago. And what happened is it was chicken, but they've realized the chicken itself was cooked. So it wasn't salmonella or Campylobacter, but it was in the cooling of the chicken that there was a flaw. They had cooled it too slowly, and bacteria started to grow in the cooked chicken, and like 100 people got sick within 3 or 4 hours of eating it in the hostel. So again, it's this cooling. What they want you to do is time it, because you want to cool it and get it to 21 degrees within 2 hours, and then into your fridge and to under 5 degrees within 4 hours. So in other words, it's 6 hours from the cooling on the stove to getting into the fridge. And this applies for foods such as, lasagna, rice dishes, soups, curries, quiche pies, all of these things that we're all making all the time. And again, there's just some more information here for you. And there's also information about, reheating, as I've just talked about. And there's information here about rice, sushi rice, which is a high-risk food, and it's the same thing. You've got to get it cool within 6 hours. And what happens with sushi too is they use acidified rice, which has had mirin or a rice vinegar added to it, but often sugar added to it. So it's slightly pickling the raw fish, and that's why we don't eat yesterday's sushi. Okay, well, look, let's have a break. It's 22, so we'll come back at 10:55 a.m. I'm going to leave my screen on. Do have a walk, and go and get some oxygen, flowing through your body. I'm going to do that too. So we'll see you soon.